All right, so if we think back to the video, Little John, Little Jim, you don't need to know the difference between Little John and Little Jim, but what did they make for Big Fat Tony? Yeah, Matt. Energy and food. And the energy that they make, what is that called? What are the three letters? What is the energy for this cell called? ATP. Okay, so they made energy and they made food. Okay, so what organelles or what parts of the cell then did Little John and Little Jim represent? Mitochondria and the chloroplast. Okay, so we talked about different pieces of evidence. Okay, we talked about the fact that they have two membranes. Okay, chloroplasts and mitochondria have two membranes. The reason they have two membranes is because Big Fat Tony engulfed them. Right, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. What I wanted to do is we're going to take 2 slides of notes on endosymbiosis, and then we're actually going to watch a video clip to review cell transport, and then I'm going to have you show me different types of cell transport on your desk, flow chart, and bingo. Okay, so that's kind of our agenda. We're like kind of reviewing, kind of going over stuff. We only have one more thing left to talk about in this unit, and that is cell size. So we're going to talk about, not until tomorrow, why cells are small and why they aren't big. And you guys will probably have a test when we come back, like Wednesday-ish. So that's kind of where we are headed. So if you want to get out your notebook, you can just, if you want, you can just tack this on to wherever you left off. It's up to you. We're only doing 2 slides. Okay. So the theory of endosymbiosis, or you'll hear it called the endosymbiotic theory. Same thing. You see that same root word there. And what this says is that mitochondria and chloroplasts were originally prokaryotes. They're originally bacteria cells, and they got engulfed or eaten by larger cells. So we saw that with Big Fat Tony. I know it was kind of a cheesy video, but it helps illustrate what goes on, or what went on, in order to form the first eukaryotic cells. Now again, scientists weren't around when this happened. This happened millions of years ago, so they had to use their good investigative skills to figure out that this is what happened. And so one of the things they did look at is, well, why do these parts of the cell, why do they have 2 membranes? And that's one thing that they looked at. So this explains how the first eukaryotic cells, so cells with complex organelles, ended up evolving. We said eukaryotes are more complex, they're larger, and they have those membrane-bound organelles. So as you saw in the Big Fat Tony video, he says, well, where's the evidence? What's the evidence that this actually happened? So when we're talking about evidence, we have several different pieces. Okay, so our second slide here is going to be evidence. I'll move this picture in a second. But with this picture, you can see how a smaller cell ended up getting engulfed. So if I color in the membranes here, remember this cell has its own membrane because it's a little like bacteria cell. Okay, when it gets engulfed, this guy has its own membrane too, right? And so what we end up having then is we end up having two membranes on the inside there because this membrane right here surrounds the other membrane. So the first piece of evidence besides the fact that they have their own membrane is that mitochondria and chloroplasts have their own DNA. We talked about DNA being in the nucleus of the cell. Well, mitochondria and chloroplasts also have their own DNA. And that's kind of unusual. But it makes sense because if the chloroplast and the mitochondria used to be a small cell, and they didn't have, or they did have their own DNA, when they got engulfed by Big Fat Tony, they would still have that same DNA. So they both have their own DNA. Now, the DNA in the mitochondria and the chloroplasts doesn't tell the rest of the cell what to do. It just tells the mitochondria and the chloroplasts what to do. The nucleus still has the DNA that tells like the rest of the cell parts and the whole cell what to do. Okay, they both have a double membrane. And the last is that the mitochondria and the chloroplasts are about the same size as bacteria. So they're smaller, and they're about the same size as a regular little prokaryotic cell. All right. So now that we have that, I want to refresh your memory on the different types of cell transport. Okay, so we're going to watch a video clip on the different types of cell transport. And then you guys are going to be showing me those different types of cell transport on your desk using a model. All right, so you have a flow chart. I'm going to pull up what this flow chart looks like, and then we will fill it in together. So that was kind of your review. I know active and passive, the different types of transport can get a little confusing, so that's why we are kind of hitting them hard here. So we're going to fill this out. See if you can put down the different types of passive transport and the different types of active transport right now. I'll fill in once I get this up here. So this will be going in your notebooks. I'll get you guys tape in a minute. So for passive, we have diffusion and we have osmosis. If you want to write above this, you can, you don't need to. But for passive, we get no energy used, and it's always going to be from high to low. Active uses energy, and typically low to high. All right, so diffusion is going to be movement of particles, right? So up to you if you want to. I'm going to draw a picture and write that this is like CO2. You could also write the definition. So you could say movement of particles from high to low, or you could just draw a picture, either one. And then osmosis is water, so H2O instead. All right, active transport. We have, I know it's going to be hard to fit in here, endocytosis, exocytosis. Again, if you want to abbreviate, that's fine. And then sodium, potassium pump. And you could write out the words or you could write out the ions. So with endocytosis, okay, we've got a cell that's engulfing something. And it's going in. Exocytosis, we've got a cell that is releasing something. And then sodium, potassium. I'm just going to show K+, but it also moves Na. So it would be from low, so I'm going to erase one of these, to high. So I'll pass out some tape. You can put that in your notebook somewhere as kind of an organizer, a reminder of what the different things are. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pass out some sheets. We are going to be kind of playing bingo to review. So you guys are going to make your own bingo cards. So I have some words, so I'll pass out some of those bingo cards. You'll write down the words in whatever order you would like. So you guys have this flow chart in front of you. We're going to go ahead and fill this in. So the first thing I want you to write above here is that the difference between active and passive. So passive, no energy, remember, and it goes from high to low. Active uses energy, and it goes from low to high. Okay, so remember our different types of passive and active transport here. So for passive, we have osmosis and we have diffusion. Remember, osmosis is the movement of water. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw some molecules, and it's high to low. So I'm going to draw a lot here and a few down here. And I'm going to label them so that I know that this is water. So you can label it H2O or water. Diffusion's the same exact thing, but it's all the other particles. It's everything except for water. So it's high to low still. But in this case, these are molecules. So let's say O2 or CO2, or you could write molecules. For active transport, we have endocytosis, exocytosis, and sodium-potassium pump. So remember, for endocytosis, we're getting something going in, so it's engulfing, okay? So here's the thing it's engulfing, and I'm going to draw an arrow pointing to in. Exocytosis, same exact thing, but in this case, it's going out. Lastly, we have the sodium-potassium pump. Remember, this is from low to high, so I'm going to draw a couple of K+. This is potassium. It also transports sodium. And then I'm going to draw them moving to a higher concentration down here where there's lots of Ks. And this does use a protein. So once you have these written down, you're going to take this in your notebook. And then we are going to review the types of cell transport with a video clip.